Welcome back to Disclosures and Consequences. I'm your host, Jason Piskey, and today I have a special guest with me. I have Burt Mulwitz. He's a 50-year veteran in real estate, has done over $1 billion worth of transactions, and he's here to talk about some of the things that he's done and how that kind of relates to the disclosures and the consequences accordingly. So, Burt, welcome to the show.
So a little bit of background about me. I started as an agent in Los Angeles. I know I don't look that old, but I am what I am. I started in 1972 as a real estate agent in Century City, next to Beverly Hills. And I became very proficient at cold calling owners. It's directory of owners. It's still made today. But I was afraid to meet anyone, so I would send my partner to get listings, and we did really well for about the first 3 months. And then by accident, I decided to buy my own listing, which was a 10-unit building in Hollywood, and I just kind of reinvested my commission. And I'm not mechanical, and I didn't trust the management company, so I decided the minute after I bought it and closed that I would resell it. So it was a highly leveraged transaction because I reinvested the commission. So I really didn't make any money yet. And I sold it. Actually, my first transaction was a little more complicated than I expected. I traded for some income property, a house and a building lot. And I just picked a number literally out of the air, what I wanted to sell it for, the building, the 10 unit. I didn't do anything to it. I was actually only there once. And so I got 6 times the amount of money that I put up within about 2 weeks. It was this nice, very nice lady. I have this great long-term memory, so I remember details from 50 years ago. Her name was Madge Brotmarkle. How could you forget that name? And she just drove by the building and she says, "I'll give you the price you want, but I'm not going to give you any money." In today's world, most people just hang up. I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds nice." And she says, "I have a equity in a rental house in Glendale, and I got a building lot in Northern California." And so I went to look at her properties, and we decided to trade deeds. And then I sold her property. So it was kind of a multi-step procedure. But from that point on, I said, I think I should keep cold calling as a buyer. I just changed my mind from being an agent to a buyer. And I bought and sold that way over 100 times in California and about 7 other states. The largest building, which is one of my transactions that will be on my course at burtmentor.com, by the way, if I could plug my website. It's BURTMENTOR.com. And so the largest property I ever bought with no money down for $5 million, and in Houston, Texas, 340 units on 18 acres. And when I was done negotiating with senior lenders, one of them being the government, my costs went from $5 million down to under $3 million. So that's the largest one I had, but I've had a lot of buildings around LA that were like 30, 40, 50 unit buildings. And so I just taught myself, totally self-taught. There were no books and courses about anything, and how to very patiently take every step along the way from finding it to closing on it. I did own buildings for a period of time, but a lot of times, especially when I was younger, I would just, find a buyer to pay more than I was, even without closing it yet. So it's called a double escrow.
Right.
Because, of course, the escrow company knew, the buyer knew, the seller knew in most cases. And, nobody ever complained about anything that I did. In fact, I've had a broker's license since 1976, not 1876, 1976. And I've never had one complaint, not even a complaint. So I was very careful, and I believe in win-win. I would always analyze what people wanted, what their motivation was, and whatever I could do to make the transaction work so, nobody complained afterwards. So I was always very straightforward with what I was doing. And it was kind of being I guess, a hybrid between being an agent and a long-term buyer. I just didn't like management, and I didn't, for the most part, not all the time, but trust other management companies. So um, I've done many, many different types of transactions. I could tell you one more I did. There was a building. I used to play golf every day. I was a golf addict. Did you ever play golf?
Yes.
Are you a golfer? Yeah.
I'm
So,
terrible, but yes.
well, I'm terrible now, but I wasn't terrible then. That was in the mid 80s. So, the golf pro at my country club was trying to sell an 18 unit building in Phoenix. And I wasn't interested then, but a few months later, I said, "Did you sell the building?" Because I was into much bigger stuff then. And he says, "No, it's in foreclosure." And I said, "Why? You owe like 300 and something. It's worth 500 and something." And he says, "Well, we had a balloon payment due of 60,000, a second mortgage. And the limited partners just decided they didn't want to come up with their share. And so I said, well, then I guess just deed it to me." I didn't even look at it. So now I own this building. I go look at it, and I cured the foreclosure and decided this building should be condos. Well, there were no condos anywhere around it, but I thought, okay, I'll be the first condo conversion in that neighborhood, which is what I did. And I went through every step along the way, never did it before. And I hired a lawyer, and I probably earned close to 500,000 with none of my own money because I just got a new loan to pay off the existing loans. And I used some very creative, totally legal, of course, techniques to allow buyers who were non-owner occupants to buy it with 10% down. Do you know what PMI insurance is?
Yes.
So I remember I had to use, I don't remember why, but I had to use three different PMI companies to insure the first, well, I guess, 10 or 20% of the loan so that I could just market it to investors with 10% down. So I sold the whole building, paid the loans back, and I was very happy. So I taught myself from A to Z how to do that. And that's one of the courses that I'm teaching, or one of the classes on what my whole mindset was from A to Z, even though I had never done it before. Um, for some reason, I I love puzzles. Anything that's difficult, if it's too simple, I get bored. So if it's a complicated transaction and it has a lot of twists and turns, I just learned from my father, if you're going to start something, then figure out a way to finish it. So my dad was a brilliant guy, and he took me everywhere, and he solved problems instantly. Like, I've never seen anybody solve problems that quickly. So that's more of my education than going to college. And my mother was an artist, and she was very creative and very funny. So they're both inside me all the time.
I want to talk a little bit about 'cause you covered quite a bit there. So primarily you've done transactions where you're buying residential properties, and then either you're flipping them or you're holding on to some of them as
Yeah.
ongoing rental income. Is that, am I
Yeah. Well, the longest building I've had was for 5 years, quite frankly.
okay?
I was in Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
Okay. And
But a lot of times, I would, because they were highly leveraged a lot of times. And again, very simple. I'm not mechanical, and I didn't trust management companies. So, like, why am I doing this? And it was, if I didn't think that I could make more, because I wasn't at that point early on when I was 24, I wasn't even asking for a listing on a building. I was just, I'd already decided that if I can pay this, then I could sell it for this. But the hard part is I'm not touching the building. I'm not raising rents. I'm not doing anything
right,
except it's all called, knowing what the value is of what you're buying. It's not very easy to do, but you got to know the value.
right.
In fact, I bought more 24 unit buildings because I got used to it. We're creatures of habit to some degree. And so I just got comfortable with a certain type of building. It was in the San Fernando Valley, and I call them C buildings in C areas because the next person who was going to purchase it from me always saw the potential of what he could do. And that's why he would pay Well, at least more than I was paying. Otherwise, I've never sold something at a loss. I just knew what I was doing because I taught myself what the value was or
Right.
what it could be, you know.
So when you're looking for a property, you said you know what you're looking for and everything else, but are you doing any kind of other than market analysis? Are you doing any kind of due diligence on the condition of the property at all? Or when you're approaching them, are you asking them to disclose like if they have any issues with termites or lead pipes or anything like that? Or are you just buying it as is and then literally flipping it to somebody
You
else?
know, it's a very good question. The ones that I decided to keep, I would go through everything you're talking about. But I just had a whatever sense that that I'm buying this undervalued. There were many times I didn't even inspect the building. I just knew that the building had potential for increased value. But because I really, in these cases where I was double escrowing them, I wasn't, of course, the person who's actually buying it from me would go through all those steps,
Right.
right? And, and I'd have to be the intermediary to solve those problems because I was dealing with the seller and the buyer at the same time.
But in those cases, you're telling the new buyer that you're still in the process of buying it yourself, and so you don't
Yeah,
necessarily know the condition of anything. So you're
right,
not hiding anything from them. You're you're the, like you said, the mediary. You're buying it from this person, selling it to this person, and the
it
new
was
buyer has to just do their own due diligence and make sure that they're getting everything that they need.
right. It was, I guess, just using the word hybrid. That's really what
Mhm.
it was in those cases. I was between being an agent or a broker and a long-term hold. And the title company knew what I was doing. The escrow company knew. So and the lender knew because I didn't have title.
Right.
But as far as due diligence, the last person, which would be the person I'm selling it to, would go through those steps, and I would, you know, have him come to the building and inspect everything.
Okay.
And yeah,
No, that
so
that makes sense, and that's still something that can be done today, especially in the kind of this litigious world we live in. Especially, I mean, I'm in the state of California. That's where you've done most of your transactions. But is that still something that can be done today without getting, without fear of being sued after the fact?
as long as you have full disclosure
Okay.
of every kind you could think of, can't have enough. Right? So there's no hidden things unless someone says they didn't read the document. But I understand that's what you do. You explain it to them. I don't. My profession is not what you're doing. I hope that they could, hopefully read English. If they didn't, well, we got an interpreter. But here's everything. I mean, anyone can look under my license, you know, and see, I've never even had a complaint, which I'm kind of surprised at because some people say, well, he bought the building, he sold the building. Never had one complaint.
Well,
So,
I think that's kind of more my question because you've got this course that you're starting to teach through your
yeah,
website, and so you're trying to transfer all this knowledge that you've gained over the years to kind of the next generation, if you will. And I think that the listeners that are listening, especially because you said like your very first transaction, you know you were able to sell it quickly and double escrows and all that kind of thing. And if that's something that's still available today and doable today, I think especially
well,
for
that's one
people
of
that are
the.
just kind of entering this sort of world, it'd be good to know that that's still something that's potentially available.
Well, I would say probably, I don't know, a very high percentage of people never did what I did, and they buy a building to keep it long term. I mean, I could say that I've made some mistakes in not keeping things for, 40 or 50 years but that's how I made a living. I've been around the world several times and had a few toys. So it was usually almost every time more than it would have been if it was a commission as an agent. It just, maybe it was more difficult, but I wasn't at that point when I did this, I wasn't asking about a listing. I was just going in as a buyer. It's a whole different mindset.
It it really is, and I that's kind of another thing I kind of want to point out is as a realtor in California today, I get bombarded daily, usually many times a day, with just random text messages from house flippers that are looking for off-market listings to go in and buy low and flip and sell high, and they're doing all the work and they're trying to turn it over within 30 to 60 days and all that kind of thing. You weren't even doing that. You were buying it and immediately selling it without even touching it.
Right.
And the other people
Well,
that tend to go after the multi-unit properties, at least from my experience, they're looking at it more from a standpoint of, okay, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to fix it up just to a point, and then I'll turn it over to somebody else and sell it to somebody else. And you weren't even doing that. You were going much faster, shortening that turnaround time because you
yeah,
weren't looking at, oh, I need this kind of rent or anything else. You didn't even really care about the rentals in particular. You were just
it
flipping it.
was,
Am I following
it,
that right?
yes, and it was, I didn't like raising rents. I didn't like displacing anybody. And, that's one of the reasons I didn't want to own something. I mean, for too long. I don't know, because I put myself in their position. If I was a tenant and I'm there for 20 years, even though I'm paying half of what I should be. So I didn't like that. So it was it was a shortcut. So I didn't have to deal with, those issues, management problems. I mean, I have managed my own buildings in the beginning, which you know, I didn't like. I guess it's like the book, and I didn't read it, which is The Art of the Deal by your favorite president, which was, I guess he only liked the art of the deal, the beginning and the end. I found that I liked the beginning and the end. That was more, how can I say, stimulating for me. I mean, literally, when I think I was probably 27, I owned this, I don't know, 40 unit building. And I called the manager on the eighth day of the month. I said, how much do we have in the account? I just want to make sure I can make the payments, right? Till I sold it. So, and a lot of these buildings, I was only like the ones I was flipping, maybe they're just once, right?
Right.
Or maybe again when I, was showing it to a prospective buyer or inspecting the building with the buyer. So anyway, the whole thing is I just didn't like management. Uh, but I do hold the record. If anybody can beat this record about the shortest escrow of all time, you want to hear that story real quick?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
So when, again, probably 90% of the time I'd be cold calling, but occasionally, if I was in the mood, I'd answer an ad in the newspaper. So 46 units in Van Nuys, right? And there was an ad in the paper. Okay. And so I talked to the owner directly, which was most of the time, one way or another, even with a broker, I would want to talk to the owner to see what kind of flexibility there was, right? So it was a big, burly Russian weightlifter, and he was an actor and very nice man. And so I said, I'm going to Hawaii in a few days, but I like the sound of your building. Can we meet we met at a deli. And so I decided to buy the building, and he agreed to sell it to me with 10% down and take um, the loan subject to. So I wasn't assuming liability. It was okay with him, subject to, because I was going to just keep making the payments, of course, until I sold it. Well, during that week, through a few conversations, I realized he only cared about getting money in the future. He didn't really care about now. So I don't remember every detail, but instead of buying it for 10% down, I bought it for 1.4% down. That's pretty good leverage.
Wow.
What is that worth? Yeah. What's that worth to someone else? I don't know. I just knew it had value. I didn't calculate exactly, but I just decided to put an ad in the paper for I think it was I laid out 18,000 for 1,000,003 building. I put an ad in the paper to try and sell it for 200,000 more. Now that takes a lot of nerve, right? I only owned the building like a week. Um, I don't know what most people do. Maybe they'd say, well, okay, I put out 18,000. I own the building. I want to make $10,000, but I put an ad in for 200. So someone just starting out in the business called me and he drove by the building and he says, I'd like to buy the building. We went back and forth on the phone for 3 or 4 days on the price. He says, I'm willing to give you $125,000 and I'll take over your loans. I'll take over the building. And now I said to him, which was very impulsively on the phone, I hadn't met him yet. I said, on one condition that we open escrow tomorrow morning and we close tomorrow afternoon. Now, how many people would say that to a buyer without scaring them away? Would you
Right.
say that to a buyer?
No, I wouldn't,
No.
but
Well, for whatever reason, I did. I felt comfortable that that was a possibility. He said, sure. We met at the escrow company parking lot. And the first thing he said was, we're not going inside. It's not my money. I said, is the money green? Whose money is it? Where's the money? Show me the money. He said, it's my tax attorney's money. He says, within 2 hours, you'll have your money. Went to the Century City to the tax attorney, and he gave me a check for 125,000, right? And that was it. I've done business with him since then, but that's the closest, I mean, the shortest escrow I've ever experienced. It was about 2 hours, right? Actually, there was no technical escrow. I just gave him the deed. I quick claimed the building to him.
well,
So that's unusual. But a lot of stuff I've done is unusual. That's why people want to go and join the course. But a lot of this stuff is tenacity, nerve. I actually asked ChatGPT, give me 50 words that describe what I've done. All 50 words were correct. It's just amazing how it gets to know you. Anyway, so in the course, I would be like, I'm going to have like 10 classes that just go over everything, my whole mindset from A to Z, how I found the transaction and how I went the whole way. And I'm actually going to have an interactive class with people asking questions. I would stop the video that I've done, which is the curriculum, and I'd say, Mary, Joe, whoever's in the class, how would you handle this objection? What would you do if you were me? And then I would continue, the video saying, well, this is what I did. So it would be an interactive class with everyone. I would ask them questions, make sure they're paying attention. And so it's basically, I want to kind of clone myself, but there's certain things I can't teach, how much nerve you have, how creative you are. But I've come up with answers to objections very quickly. And again, it was my father's, my upbringing with my father, because he was just brilliant.
uh, another question that I want to have, and I'm already picking this up from you, is that when you do your transactions, you're not looking at oh, I need to sell this to get one over on somebody because I have to get a certain profit. You already know kind of what that future value is of the property. You're getting it at a lower price. Not that you're pulling a fast one or doing any kind of shenanigans on the front end either. You're offering a fair value to the current owner, knowing that you've got connections that are going to garner a higher price. And so you're just doing it all kind of upfront. Am I?
Yeah, well, nobody ever complained about anything. They got what they wanted. I mean, sometimes obviously the price might be higher than, if it was higher than what I thought the current value was, I would go on to the next one, because unfortunately I didn't have a friend or a partner or broker. I'd say, here, list the building with I just went on to the next one. In fact, it does remind me of one story. By the way, my CRM, if everybody knows what a CRM is here, customer relation management, was a shoebox with 8 by 10 cards. And days of the week, the month, I'd fill out, talk to Joe. He's going bowling tomorrow. Call him the next day and ask him how his bowling was. I had hundreds of those conversations going, right? And now, of course, they have CRMs to do all that. Um, so I would have continue, and then, oh, I know where I was going with that. So I remember going to meet someone who had a building in West Hollywood to buy the building, and the price that I thought was above market, or certainly above what I wanted to pay to either own it or flip it, and I didn't buy it. I called him a year later, and the price was higher, but the market value was much higher too. So I did buy the building. That was the first time I've ever done anything like that. I actually paid more than I could have, a year ago, but the spread, it's really kind of, you could call it real estate arbitrage is really what it is.
And that's really what it sounds like. Um,
Yeah.
okay, nice. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit here. I see also that you're an author, and that
Yeah.
you wrote a book a few years ago. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it's about personal experiences about, yeah, it's called The House That Built Me. It's on Amazon. And unfortunately, I lost my wife when
Oh,
she was 30 years old. She died in her sleep. And I just built a big house, and my daughter is 3. So I raised her myself. I did have nannies, but there were a lot of inferences in the book about how I raised a child by myself, and I'm a big kid to begin with, but I did. Excuse me, I have to pat myself on the back. I did such
as
a
you
good
should.
job. She's a professional athlete, and she's very happy in
Wow.
her life. Does very well, and she replaced me though with her boyfriend, which I couldn't have found a better mate for her. He's fabulous. She
Wow.
listens to him. She doesn't listen to me so much, but she listens to him. So anyway, I'm very proud of myself for doing that. So the book is partially about that and some experiences that I've had, and it's called The House That Built Me. It's on Amazon. Yeah,
Okay, and that's more on your personal life.
it's a little bit of real estate too. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's somewhat. Yeah, but it didn't list all these different transactions that I want to have, in my course. I basically picked out 10 interesting, challenging transactions that I've done, which is the curriculum for the course. The first thing, if I could explain, and I'm
Yes,
open
please.
to suggestions, is to have well, I have an intake form. I want to make sure someone's interested and can afford something, and they fill that out first on the website, and then I look at that and decide, who I want to speak with for free for like 15 minutes or longer to get an idea of what they want to learn, what level they are. Are they a beginner? So I can put them in the right class so they're not bored, but it could be a new person. So I can, talk about simple things or very sophisticated things. So I don't want to have too many really like experts in the class with a beginner because I would bore. So it's a matter of combining the right class anyway, and it'll be live interactive. And the next thing is to join a free class. I would go over from A to Z one transaction, and they would ask questions like, how did you do that? What did you think of this? And, and I want it to be interactive. So they felt like they're learning something and I could see that they're learning. And I would ask, so I have an objection that I've already handled, of course. I would say, okay, how would you handle this? And I'd ask everybody in the class. So that could go on, who knows? There's no time limit. Could go on for at least an hour, even though the actual video um, interpretation of the transaction might be 3 or 4 minutes, but I would stop the video and say, okay, guys, what would you do here? All right. And hopefully they would learn if they, how to do what I did, either no matter what part of it, no matter what part of the transaction they want to learn from.
Mhm. That's interesting because not all courses are interactive that way. Trust me, I've been through dozens of real estate courses and everything else, and a lot of times it's just speaking at you.
Yes, that's why I thought of it.
They'll
Exactly.
ask, maybe some questions just to make sure that somebody's paying attention, but they're not really trying to get that interaction of, hey, what would you do in this case, and then try and get the student to uh, respond. Whatever, I like that.
If I were to have been taught that way when I was young, I would have been a better student, especially in a smaller class. I want it to be interactive. I want to see what they're comfortable doing or not comfortable doing. So I'm learning from their experience. So that's why I like I've never seen a class taught like this, being interactive.
Okay, and what's the website that our listeners can go to find your class again?
I forgot because I'm old. Sorry. BurtMentor.com, BurtMentor.com.
BurtMentor.com. Okay, excellent.
Very
Um,
original idea. No one else has that name and that site. So that's why I got it .com. Yeah. So I would appreciate anyone wanting to go there or contact me, and they could have any kind of question they have. They could be a beginner. They could have, for example, they could have their uncle owns an apartment building. They could be a real estate agent at residential, and well, what do I do with my uncle's apartment building? So I would guide them, what to do, whether they're licensed or not, just, advice. If they want one-on-one after we do this first free class, that's up to them, right? So, but I'm very open in the beginning as to people's suggestions. It's kind of like a combination focus group. My skill, one of my best skills, is listening. I will tell you, the partner I started with 50 years ago, he said to me one day, I'll never forget this. He says, "You already know what you know. If you want to know what somebody else knows, shut up and listen." It's not just listening. It's really comprehending, and it's like exercise. When you ask the right questions and somebody tells you their answer, you're reacting to what they're saying. You may have all these thoughts in your mind, which most people are like, I want to just continue this. I want to get my thoughts out. I taught myself how to park my thoughts. I put it over here, even though that's the next thing I wanted to say. But instead of keep going, I reacted to what they said because I'm trying to solve their problem.
That's good
And
advice, no matter what industry you're in. That's very good advice.
yeah, doesn't matter what it's in. I always said there's only one thing moving to make this transaction work. There's only one thing. It's not the building. In fact, I'm going to ask you, what's the one thing moving to get a transaction done? If I ask the question right, what's moving?
It's the current owner moving the property. That would be my answer.
You got really close there. Very proud of you. The hand with the pen. That's
Oh,
what's
there you go.
moving. I once did a transaction on, I think it was 60 units, and he wanted to take the contract home. He was in my office, and I
Mhm.
said, fine. But I also, because I know the contracts, I want to explain it to him. He said, no, I want to take it home. Well, for some reason, impulsively, I said, I'm holding the pen in my hand. And I said, okay, how about just initial the pages? I asked him. I didn't say you have to do anything. He took the pen and initialed the pages. He says, okay, I might as well sign them.
That's
I
brilliant.
don't know. I didn't expect that.
That's brilliant. I think they teach car salesmen that. Um,
I do? Oh, okay.
I it just it I think that's brilliant actually that you because you got him nodding yes. He's reading the contract. He's already in the process mentally of, okay, I'm initialing this, and so I might as well just sign it, just like you said. It's very, um, I don't want to say it's a mind game, but it almost is. Like you got him to agree to buy it, and he's seeing himself signing all the papers, and so might as well just go ahead and sign on the dotted line at
Well, he had
the end.
already agreed to sell it.
Right.
That was no question. He just wanted, I don't blame him. I wish I knew you then. You just sit there and say, okay, let's go over this contract.
Yeah,
That's
and I
what
would
you
have
do.
gone. Yeah, that is what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would have gone over. I would have read it first, and then just gone over everything and highlighted the important parts that are important to him, answer any questions that he has,
Yeah.
and then go from there. Yeah. So you've got this course going on, and you're semi-retired. I believe you live in Thailand now.
I
Um,
live part-time in Thailand. Yeah.
okay, so you're you're kind of retired. You're doing this. So what's next for you?
My
Yeah.
large dream is I don't know if the technology is here, but I'm working on with all these conversations about cloning myself and being an AI. So I'll be able to scale this with everyone's help, because I'm going to train. ChatGPT told me some of the steps and apps and whatever to use. So hopefully in 6 months, you'll be able to talk to me, but it'll be my clone. So I can scale it and have thousands of people talking to my AI. I mean, I could talk to thousands of people at once, but I might get tired. So my AI would be me. I don't know how many people are doing that.
So you're trying to upload your
Yeah.
knowledge
Yeah.
into
And
the AI.
my knowledge, how I react. So when someone asks me a questions, there's no, very minimal delay, just like ChatGPT does now. So I said, I want to be an AI. That's my biggest goal.
That's
But I have fun teaching. I'll tell you where this idea came from in case anybody
yeah,
wants to know.
yeah, absolutely.
I Years ago I owned a rental house in Van Nuys. You know where that is? Van Nuys,
Mhm.
California.
Yes.
And and so the principal of a high school came to buy the house from me, which he did. And he said, his name was Hal. He said, "How do you make a living?" And I'd been in the business, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. I said, "I just buy and sell buildings for a living. That's what I do." He says, "Well, how do you do this? How do you do that?" He asked me questions for over a week, almost every day. I said, "Hal, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a list of numbers to call. You make the appointments. I'll meet you there." And that's what we did. We bought this whole, I think, 6 buildings together. And
Well,
that's where this whole idea about mentoring came from. What do I want to do? Because I like the term that I've given to myself, digital nomad. So now I could do this with all the technology from anywhere,
right.
you know. So I've been to 62 countries. I'm on my little iPad here. It works fine. And I'm willing to talk to anybody about anything. You want to sell baseball cards? I'll help you sell baseball cards. Doesn't matter what it is.
Nice. Okay. Well, Burt, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on my podcast today. Do you have any parting words or anything you'd like to say before we end?
No, I'm happy to do this, and I'm hoping that enough people watch it and want to contact me. I do plan on having. We talked about this, my own podcast,
Mhm.
and you are going to be my first guest.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'd be honored.
Okay, I look forward to talking to you further. And whenever you like. So,
Absolutely. And maybe in the future I can have you back on again as your course starts to take off and you've got more information to share.
thank you.
Of course. Burt Mulwitz, thank you again for joining the podcast today. And I appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next one.
Okay, thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.